What encounter did you experience that made you come to realize spirits and ghosts were real? I was about 12 or 13, and I was at my Aunt Marge's house. It was about 2 to 3 in the morning, and I was on a phone call with my cousin. My Aunt Marge is an accountant. She has an office in the next room. She specializes in taxes and has a radio in that office. All of a sudden, just turns on. I am frozen just in complete shock because the amount of energy that this thing embodies. Also, nobody's awake in the house but me, and it's very late, so I'm sitting there just shocked thinking about what if and how this thing could get me if it wanted to. The volume of the radio begins slowly increasing all the way to max volume the radio could physically go. At this point, I was in fight or flight mode, like I almost couldn't move. I finally came back to reality afterward. It took every ounce of my courage to run in there, and I turned off the radio. I didn't stick around long and proceeded to bolt back out. I didn't know what to think or say, but this was probably most creepiest encounter with a spirit I've ever had. I was visiting my in-laws with my baby for a few days and was sleeping in the bedroom with the door open so I could hear if my baby woke up. I rolled over and woke up seeing a young man standing in the doorway looking at me. It was like I felt that it was okay. He was letting me know he was going to take a look at my baby. Then he went down the hall towards the baby's room. The next morning, I asked my father-in-law if someone was there the night before, and he asked what I meant. I told him what I saw. He said that must have been Brantley. He was my husband's best friend who had been killed in a car accident years before. He said that sometimes they see him sitting in the living room on the sofa at night, and he wasn't surprised at all. He thought Brantley wanted to see the baby, and that made sense to him. Oddly, I hadn't been upset about it the night before, although I wasn't sure if I really saw him or if I just dreamed about seeing him. My father and I hated each other. The day he went into the hospital, I walked into his room and he looked at me. He said, "Michael, I'm dying." I just smiled and said, "Yep." Then I walked out of the room. He died the next day. The viewing was held during the usual times, 2 to 4 and 7 to 9. When my wife and I came home at 4, I saw that all the dining room chairs had been tossed into the living room. We had 4 large dogs, and my wife said they must have been rough housing while we were gone. I put everything back in place. When we came back home at 9, once again, the chairs were back out in the living room again. I knew at that point that my father was messing with me from the other side. I cursed his name and commanded him out of the house. The next day, I had a priest come by and bless the house. The blessing of the house kept him away. That was in 2004. In 2009, we moved from Pennsylvania to Florida. About 5 years ago, he found us. Every night after we were in bed for a few moments, I felt someone sit down on the end of the bed. This went on for years and never escalated further. It was just something he could do to piss me off. After a few years, I talked to my sister about it. She is very religious. She said because he isn't harming anyone or moving things around, I think he is sitting on your bed waiting for you to tell him you forgive him. I said, "Donna, he is going to have one hell of a long wait." So she started telling me different Bible verses saying that God would not forgive me if I didn't forgive my father. I said every time I think of him a rage comes over me and I just want to hit him. Then she said, "Michael, the Bible doesn't say you have to like him. You can still be mad about the things he did to you, but you must tell him that you forgive him." She taught me the words to say to God asking for help getting through this. It took about a month and I was in a room by myself and I finally said, "Dad, I forgive you. I will never understand why you treated me and all the family the way you did, but understand from my heart I forgive you." I was surprised at the relief I felt and I did that. I had been carrying that baggage around all those years. Donna was right. He never sat on the bed again. I sat alone one night in my bed, while my dog wouldn't stop making short barking noises in the dark. I get my phone and turn on the screen to see time and to have just a little light. My dog is standing at the end of the bed on the corner, staring into an empty corner of the room. While looking at the time, I noticed the date, September 11, which was the date my grandmother had died years before. I kind of chuckled a second and told her to just say hi so the dog would shut up. All of a sudden, my dog stopped barking and started wagging her tail like she was encountering someone she liked. I can feel the air shift also. I've never had any doubt about that encounter that night. I have another. The day that my said grandmother passed, I had come home from work to an empty house. My grandmother was in the hospital, and I planned on getting cleaned up and going to visit. We all knew it was coming. At the time, I had had a cat for years. She got out from my mom's house on a visit one day about a month earlier, and I was never able to find her. So, that day when I got home from work, I was walking into the living room and the house phone rang. I was looking to find where it was when my back was to the kitchen doorway. Just as I found the phone, I heard my grandmother call my name from the kitchen, clear as day. I turned around like WTF. And there, sitting in the doorway was my cat that my grandmother had given me. I stood there completely dumbfounded, staring at my missing cat. Then the phone rang again, and I turned away from the door to get it, but looked back, and my cat was gone. I already knew what the call was. I answered phone, and my mom was bawling and told me my grandmother had just passed.